he asked a question which doctors had forgotten to ask. If stress possibly could give me this disease, will not relaxation or being happy reverse the disease? They were not even thinking about themselves all the time. They thought, well, life is short, I have noticed now, so let me now leave behind good memories. And if they had hurt somebody, they were quick to apologize. If somebody had hurt them, they told them, doesn't matter, all is forgotten, now you are forgiven completely, we are friends again. And the result was that they could build an atmosphere of love around them. And the people with whom they interacted in this way, they also knew, well, this person has cancer, probably he'll not live very long, so they were very quick to make amends, and they could build that atmosphere of love around them. They became more loving, caring, and more willing to share and give. And these were the people who seemed to recover completely. And again, the technician who came to feed the rabbits, when it came to the lower cages, she took the rabbit out, held it in her lap, cuddled it, fondled it, kept it back in the cage, and then gave it food very lovingly. When it came to the top cage, she could hardly reach there. She opened the door, threw the food in, and shut the cage. So that rabbits who got a daily dose of love and affection could override the adverse effects of a high-fat, high-cholesterol diet. The mind-body relationship is that strong. The industrialist Godrej, once he was asked what he would expect from his children, he said, I would like them to be good, happy, and successful in that order. So that is sort of the ultimate wisdom that even he has reached. Because if you are good, you will be happy. And if you are good and happy, success will take care of itself.
Our next speaker is Dr. Bijlani. He needs no introduction, I think so. He has touched all our lives at some point of time. People who came after Dr. Bijlani left AIIMS would have read his textbooks. I think we have been looking forward to this lecture since we announced that you were coming. Dr. Bijlani, a warm welcome to you to Orlando. As a quick reminder, could you guys please keep the back door closed as you're exiting or coming in, just so that we don't have noise coming from outside. Dr. Bijlani, a warm welcome. आप आए हमारे इस प्रोग्राम की चांदनी लगी. Thank you, thank you.
आप आए बाहर.
Thank you, Samvit, for a very brief and yet a very touching and meaningful introduction. My dear brothers and sisters, some cases I could say boys and girls. I've just been told that although in the program I had just 20 minutes, I have a full 1 hour, which is always a much better situation than the other way around. But that has also happened to me sometimes. The time shrinks when you are actually on the stage. But anyway, I'll try not to be very verbose and leave enough time for questions. The topic is why go beyond the mind-body connection. In one of the books by one of our fellow Amazonians, Deepak Chopra, he cites the case of an elderly woman who came with symptoms referable to the gallbladder. And she was operated upon. The surgeon found an inoperable tumor, just closed her up, and shared with the relatives that this is what I found, and this lady is unlikely to live for more than a few months. But then the relatives requested that we had been telling her that she probably just has gallstones, and please don't tell her what you found. The doctor agreed, and he told the lady that you had gallstones, which I have removed. And he thought that maybe that was the last that he had seen of her. But after 6 months, she came back for a checkup. And then he thought maybe that was the last time he saw her. But she kept coming every 6 months. And finally, one day she revealed the secret. She said that I was so relieved to find that I only had gallstones. I had thought I had cancer. Now, that is the mind-body connection, mind-body relationship. If she believed she had stones and she would stay well, even her cancer probably regressed, which can happen. With that introduction, let me go further. But before going further, the love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you. Although the mind-body connection has been known all along, Hippocrates talked about it, ancient Indian medicine talked about it, but then in the euphoria generated by the spectacular advances in modern medicine, particularly during the first half of the 20th century, we forgot that this relationship existed, because that is when we got things like insulin and antibiotics and so on. Now, if you give chloromycin, typhoid gets all right within a week. You don't need the patient's mind to cooperate. If you give insulin, the blood sugar comes down, irrespective of what the patient is thinking. And therefore, we forgot the mind-body connection, and the focus was entirely on the body. And that further increased because we learnt more and more complex details about the body. We acquired more and more techniques for visualizing the body from within, starting with the X-rays and going on to the CT scans and the MRIs and the PET scans, and then all types of sophisticated biochemical tests. And the result was that we forgot the mind-body connection and started believing that probably that was enough, and that all problems in medicine would be solved through this approach. But then that didn't really happen, and we discovered the mind-body relationship through the chronic degenerative diseases, where we found that stress was playing an important role. But then to really wake us up to this mind-body relationship, it took not the physicians, but a person who was a well-educated person, but not a physician. And the result was that we got some experimental evidence for the mind-body relationship as a result of the experiences of Norman Cousins, who had a stressful journey to Russia because he had been sent there for the SALT talks, the strategic arms limitation talks, as a part of the American delegation. And it's there that he went through a stressful period. And when he returned to the US, soon he got ankylosing spondylitis. And then, to cut a long story short, he decided that since the doctors didn't have anything very meaningful to offer, and through Hans Selye's studies, he built up some sort of a rough relationship between the stressful period he had in Russia with this disease of the immune system that he had. So he asked the doctors that I don't want to stay in the hospital any longer. I don't want the painkillers that you are giving me. At some stage, he was taking 26 tablets of painkillers a day in the hospital. He said, I'm ready to tolerate the pain, but I will not take these painkillers. So he got discharged. And then, through Hans Selye's studies, again, he found that there was some relationship possibly between stress and the immune system. So, and he had a disease of the immune system. So he asked a question which doctors had forgotten to ask. If stress possibly could give me this disease, will not relaxation or being happy reverse the disease? The doctors had forgotten to ask this type of a question. So what he did was, instead of the drugs, he started watching comedies which would make him laugh. And he found that not only it made him feel better, in fact, he documented that 10 minutes of laughter gave him 2 hours of pain-free existence. And now we know that it can happen because we have an endogenous pain relief system, which is based on the endorphins, release of endorphins. That time we didn't know, but now we know that we have evidence, neurochemical evidence in the brain why it could have happened. And then being an educated man, he also thought that let me document a little more, and he started getting ESR done, and he found that not only laughter gave him pain-free existence, it also brought down the ESR rate. And he became then one out of those 500 people, as he was told, who recover from ankylosing spondylitis. He recovered completely with the help of a combination of laughter and vitamin C. And why he started taking huge doses of vitamin C? Because he again read in the literature that the painkillers that he was taking had depleted his adrenals of the vitamin C, and he thought he should make that up. Because adrenals are important anyway, but they're particularly important in immune function. All this, old studies done in the 1950s by Hans Selye, from that he could figure out this much. So he literally cured himself with a combination of laughter and vitamin C. And then he went on to write a book The Anatomy of an Illness, which also came to the AIIMS library. And Atul Dhir was the first person to make me aware of the existence of this book. And he told me that the librarians have put it in the anatomy section. So in this, he talks about all these things, which I told you in much greater detail. And this attracted a lot of attention in the medical circles. And he was invited by the UCLA School of Medicine to join on the faculty, which he did because he thought that this will help the further developments in medicine. So he moved all the way from Connecticut to California to be able to take up that position. And then, his job was manifold, but one of his jobs there was to try and raise funds for the research on the relationship between the psychological state and immune function. And he could raise so much funds, so many business people came forwards, that he had more funds than UCLA School of Medicine could utilize. So UCLA then became a sort of a funding agency for sponsoring that type of research anywhere in the US. And the result was that within 25 years, a whole new science had grown, psychoneuroimmunology. The relationship between the mind, mediated by the nervous and the endocrine systems, to affect the immune system. When we are under chronic stress, the immunocompetence suffers, and when we are happy and relaxed and cheerful and hopeful, the immune function improves. And this became science. Now, this was an important development because it built a bridge between the subjective and the objective. As scientists, we tend to respect much more objective data. Now, psychological state is something wishy-washy, being happy, being relaxed, being under stress. But then it had physiological effects which were measurable, because immunocompetence can be measured in terms of in the natural killer cells and function and so on and so forth. So you can collect numerical data on immune function, which can be analyzed statistically, and you can show whether there's a significant difference before and after and so on. And the result was that psychoneuroimmunology became that bridge between the subjective and the objective, which was far more convincing than the traditional common sense wisdom that there is a mind-body relationship in health and disease. So this was one of the major developments in the 1960s, starting in the 1960s, and by 1980 or 1990, it had grown enough to have to be proper science, and Norman Cousins is therefore considered the father of psychoneuroimmunology. There's a Psychoneuroimmunology Research Society, which has annual meetings in which there is a Norman Cousins Memorial Lecture. So that much sort of also for not only this person, but for the liberal system that exists in the US. In spite of being not being a medical person, he was offered a faculty position in a medical school, and he could publish single author articles in journals like the New England Journal of Medicine. Then, there's epidemiological evidence in favor of the mind-body relationship. And some of it comes from the studies which have been collated by Dean Ornish in his book, Love and Survival. In this book, he has talked of some very laborious studies done over a period of 30 years or so in a few universities. The students have been studied when they were in their 20s while still in the university, and then followed up 30 years later, which is very difficult, but then these studies have been done. And it was found that students who were psychologically well adjusted to start with, when they were in their 50s, they had a 50% chance of having one midlife disease like hypertension, coronary artery disease, diabetes, or cancer. Whereas those who were not so well adjusted, particularly who didn't have good relationships with their parents, it was found that they had a nearly 100% chance of having one of these midlife diseases when they were in their 50s. So the risk was doubled. 50% versus nearly 100%. And when I read this book, I had not read the book which I'm reading these days, Why Good Things Happen to Good People. And this is a book by Stephen Post and Jill Nymark. This talks about studies which are not only long-term, but have looked at a wide variety of uh, beneficial effects coming from the simple act of loving and giving. Then, we have clinical evidence. Okay, there is a mind-body relationship, but does it work? Can it be applied? Fortunately, it's a two-way street. Not only does chronic stress give disease, but if the person is relaxed and cheerful, it can also reverse the disease. And that evidence again came from Dane Ornish's studies. He was a pioneer in establishing the place of yoga in the treatment of coronary artery disease. Yoga looked at in a comprehensive way. Not just the physical postures, but along with that, also a change in the diet, not smoking, and above all, a psychosocial intervention so that if they were under stress, they could be given, they could be counseled, and the stress levels were brought down. And of course, there were other elements like humor and visualization and so on. So it's a very comprehensive program. And what he saw was that not only these patients felt better, they also got better. And the first landmark study was published in The Lancet in 1990, I think. It was a one-year follow-up in which he demonstrated through coronary angiography that at the end of 1 year, those who received only conventional treatment, if they started with a 50% block in the coronaries, it increased to say 52%. Whereas those who got this, in addition to the conventional treatment, this yoga-based intervention, they had, if they started with a 50% block, they had only about 48% block. So the change was not dramatic, but the direction was just the opposite. And this was, in a way, very remarkable because it was a paradigm shift. I don't know what happens in medical schools now, but most of you, when you were going through medical school, would have picked up the impression while studying pathology that chronic degenerative diseases like coronary artery disease or diabetes, they generally keep getting worse. And if we can keep them the same, that would be a great achievement. They never get better. Self-healing mechanisms exist only for acute diseases like common cold and diarrhea and so on. They don't exist for these chronic degenerative diseases. So showing that even the chronic degenerative disease could go back, which means that there were some self-healing mechanisms available in the body for that, provided we gave these mechanisms the right conditions to work, was itself a big achievement, a paradigm shift in medicine. And that's why, his paperback that he wrote calls this program Reversal of Heart Disease, which is sometimes mistaken. Reversal does not mean that the person has the arteries of a newborn. It only means that the direction, the disease starts reversing in the direction. And one can understand damage which has accumulated over a period of a few decades cannot be reversed within a few weeks or months or even a year. And but all the same, the fact that it can start going back itself was a big, great paradigm shift in modern medicine. And here's another person who has done remarkable work with cancer patients. Dane Ornish, of course, did a lot of research. Bernie Siegel has not done that much research. But what these pioneers have done is, apart from whatever work they have themselves done, they have collected work which supports their ideas from all over and written these well-referenced popular paperbacks. And that's what has sort of created a sort of evidence for those who care to read these books that it really does work. And what Bernie Siegel briefly found was that although we consider cancer to be incurable, he's a cancer surgeon, that some patients after surgery seem to recover completely and others don't. The difference between those who do and who don't is not that their cancers are different or in one case the disease is milder and in the other case more severe or any such thing. It is the person who has the disease that seemed to matter. And the people who recovered completely, got cured of cancer completely after surgery, were those who firstly did not consider that the doctor was always correct. If the doctor said that you are likely to live for only a year more, they said, well, the doctor is not God, I'll prove him wrong. That patient had a fighting spirit. Secondly, They were not obsessed with the disease and death. He said, okay, everybody has to die one day. Now at least I have advance notice. Let me do in whatever time still remains, let me try to do in that whatever I wanted to do but had been postponing so far. So they prepared their wish list and went about that. They were not all the time thinking about the disease. Thirdly, they were not even thinking about themselves all the time. They thought, well, life is short, I have noticed now, so let me now leave behind good memories. And if they had hurt somebody, they were quick to apologize. If somebody had hurt them, they told them, doesn't matter, all is forgotten, now you are forgiven completely, we are friends again. And the result was that they could build an atmosphere of love around them. And the people with whom they interacted in this way, they also knew, well, this person has cancer, probably he'll not live very long, so they were very quick to make amends, and they could build that atmosphere of love around them. They became more loving, caring, and more willing to share and give. And these were the people who seemed to recover completely. And again, we have evidence now in immunology. We have immunological surveillance going on in the body all the time, so that any incipient tumor that we develop, and we are all developing small tumors from time to time, before it becomes a full-grown tumor, the immune system recognizes these incipient tumors as foreign, as not belonging to the body, and eliminates them the way it eliminates germs. And therefore, developing a full-blown tumor is itself evidence of some degree of immunological weakness, and therefore there is a relationship also between stress and cancer. But then what the cancer surgeon does is to remove the tumor, but no surgeon can ensure that every single cancer cell is removed. What the cancer surgeon can achieve is bring down the tumor load. And once the tumor load is brought down, then once again, it is within the reach of the immune system to eliminate the remaining cancer cells still lurking somewhere in the body, and sometimes at many places in the body, because the manipulation of the tumor by the surgeon itself might probably release some cancer cells into the bloodstream, so that now they have spread all over the body instead of remaining confined to the place where the surgeon operated. Because cancer cells, as you know, also have less adhesiveness. Their connections between the cells are weaker than in the normal cells. So the result is that the cancer cell, while doing a lot of good, might have done a little harm, but then whatever he has done, the tumor load has come down drastically, and now if the person's immune system is in good shape, the person's immune system takes care of the remaining cells, and that's how the person is completely cured. That probably is a plausible mechanism for why it happens. But then what Bernie Siegel thought was, if this is the type of behavior that comes naturally to some people, can it be induced in others? And therefore he started a psychosocial intervention based on this, and it seemed to work, because attitudes are not easy to change. But when a person has a disease like cancer and the person knows I probably not live very long, even attitudes can change. And that's how positive results were achieved. And then he has put together in a large number of his works, Peace, Love and Healing, Love, Medicine and Miracles. And he has written a lot more books, and some unrelated to medicine also. He's an animal lover. He has written books on the close relationship that exists between human beings and animals in some cases, and how even that can be therapeutic. So mind-body medicine now is on a firm scientific footing, and what essentially it is about is that the powers of the patient's mind can be harnessed for healing the patient's body. Sounds very simple, but then, so in a way what we have achieved is that earlier in medicine, particularly in the first half of the 20th century, the focus was on the body, because we felt that by looking at the body carefully, we'll be able to solve all the problems. But then what we forgot was that by dissecting the bulb very thoroughly, you will never understand how the bulb lights up. And therefore, the mind provided us a peep into that switch, which can make the bulb light up or turn off. So that is the mind-body connection. But then, for the mind to be healthy, the mind should be at peace. But then what is and the spiritual teachers have had this all along. Here's a quote from the mother: establish a greater peace and quietness in your body that will give you the strength to resist attacks of illness. So the spiritual masters have talked about it. The ancient systems of medicine talked about it, Hippocrates talked about it, but then we forgot it, but then it keeps coming back again and again, and that's what happened. But then the mind, if we look at it carefully, is very difficult to control. That's what Sri Krishna tells Arjuna also in the Gita. Yes, true enough, mind is very difficult to control. What you need is abhyas and vairagya. But anyway, so why it is difficult to control is because the mind has two basic aspects, feeling and thinking. Emotions are by very nature volatile. And the intellect, the thinking part, is by very nature vacillating, indecisive. And the result is that it's very difficult to control the mind. And therefore, for the mind to be at peace, the mind needs an anchor. Do we have such an anchor in the body? To understand that, we have to understand who we are. And what we are not just the body and the mind having these two aspects, the emotions and the intellect, but behind it is also the soul. In fact, these surface instruments, the body and the mind, are manifestations of the soul, and the soul is not there just as an inert entity to give us the consolation that even after we are dead and gone, at least the soul is immortal, therefore some bit of us will continue to live. It's not just to give us that consolation. The soul also has a dynamic aspect. It does participate in day-to-day affairs of life. It puts in that faint whisper which tells us from time to time what is right and wrong, and this dynamic aspect of the soul is what Sri Aurobindo and the mother have called the psychic being. So we have this dynamic aspect of the soul, and that can be our anchor. That in fact is our anchor, which means what being the anchor means is that the mind should work in light of what the soul is trying to tell it. Which means that the mind should be enlightened by the soul. The screen that normally separates our ordinary mind from this inner light, this inner guide, that screen has to be weakened and eventually eliminated. That in fact is the journey of yoga, the journey of spirituality, and in a way one can say the goal of human existence. So that is the anchor. Why? Because the soul does not suffer from the type of incapacities and vulnerabilities and imperfections which the mind suffers from. It has no desires, it has no anger, it has no jealousy, it has no hatred, it has none of these weaknesses. And therefore, the soul is the anchor, and we have to anchor the mind to the soul, tune our mind to the soul. So the anchor is the soul, and now we have the whole picture. Soul is like that electricity, because the switch is there, but then the switch is of no use unless you have electricity. So what this switch is doing is only making it possible whether electricity will flow to the bulb or will not flow to the bulb. So that is what completes the picture. And like electricity, soul is something which we are not very conscious of. It remains invisible. Mind and body we can relate to, but soul we can't relate to, just as we can't easily perceive electricity. We can only see the switch. Now, what does anchoring the mind to the soul really mean? One can go round and round and build a whole philosophy to come to the conclusion, but the conclusion is that anchoring the mind to the soul essentially means bringing more love into life. And love is expressed by giving what we have to those who need it. It's as simple as that. And in fact, this book, which I'm reading these days, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, the subtitle is How to Live a Longer, Healthier, Happier Life by the Simple Act of Giving. Giving is an expression of love. And here's Bernie Siegel. Love releases incredible energy that promotes the biochemistry of healing. There are biochemical correlates of these positive emotions like love, which may be expressed in many ways. Love has many languages, but essentially it is giving, whether it is giving an object, giving money, giving time, giving attention, or giving thanks, or giving a smile, but it involves some sort of giving. And this is one of the lines that comes towards the end of Sri Aurobindo's epic poem, Savitri. To feel love and oneness is to live. What makes life worth living, what makes life meaningful, is to live a life which is full of love, which in turn has been inspired by oneness. In fact, without some sense of oneness, there can be no love. Because who are the people whom we love, whom we feel related to in some way? They have something in common with us. And these are the people whom we love. And at a fundamental level, from a spiritual point of view, we are all one, we are all interrelated. So it's that sense of oneness which can inspire love, and love which has been inspired by that sense of oneness, when it is expressed, makes life worth living. So the doctor is in fact in, it is within us. But then for this doctor to work, it needs the right conditions, it needs peace. And for that also the arrangement is within. We have that inner light. And this is something which Aurobindo talked about, which we can relate to easily still even now, because we haven't, because the approach which talks about the mind-body relationship, which depends upon it to a substantial degree for prevention and management of disease, and further goes also to the soul, is still not mainstream. And this is what he's talking about. It should take long for self-cure to replace medicine because of the fear, self-distrust, and unnatural physical reliance on drugs, which medical science has taught to our minds and bodies and made our second nature. So we got conditioned. Our mind has got conditioned that I need to go to a doctor and get some medicine. We don't trust our body to heal itself. We don't believe that that miracle can happen within the body itself. Once, my granddaughter had a skin rash, and then the next time I called her, she said, it's all right. I don't know, how did it become all right? I applied a cream. Now, I told her, suppose you had not applied the cream, then what would have happened? That set her thinking, and she came up more or less with the right answer, that maybe it would have taken longer, but it would have got all right. Which means that even the child realizes that there is our self-healing mechanisms within the body. What the medicine is doing is only assisting those self-healing mechanisms. So we have plenty of time for questions, I have been told. But in any case, you can write more questions on this email. This is a picture postcard view of Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch, where I live and work. And you're all welcome there. I'm sure most of you keep coming to India off and on, and you're most welcome to come visit there, stay there for a few days if you like. We have accommodation available. Some of you might have studied in the Mothers International School, which was inspired by this ashram. It started with the ashram, more or less. Both started in the year 1956, the ashram, and then a few months later, the school. Anyone from the Mothers International School here? And the Mothers International School's building is rather old, and in terms of the calculations of the engineers, it has outlived its life. So the building is being phased out, and the primary school building, the construction of the new primary wing has already started, and that's why we are also on a fund collection drive, and the books that you bought will contribute to that building. There are two YouTube channels. One is the Ashram's YouTube channel, and another of an online learning platform, which I was instrumental in initiating during COVID. Like, in case of many other people, COVID compelled me to go online initially after a little reservation and aversion to it, because I didn't understand the technology. And I thought, why should I have to master this new technology? I can continue writing books. Maybe I'll get more time to write during COVID. But then, if something has to happen, it happens. A team of about half a dozen youngsters materialized, who in one way or the other contributed and made it happen. So the course on teaching yoga that I had been doing for about 10 years before COVID was done online completely, and deliberately kept free, so that there's no distinction between those who pay and those who don't pay. Anybody could join the classes anytime, and the recordings were all uploaded on YouTube. So in fact, you have all the material available for a good course on teaching yoga available on YouTube even today, completely free of charge. And apart from that, that is about 200 hours of video material, the teaching yoga course. There are many more videos. Now this platform has 700 videos on the broad topics of yoga, education, and spirituality. That's what YES stands for. Yoga, education, and spirituality. And from a broader point of view, that covers just about everything under the sun, including health education. There's one playlist in which you may be particularly interested on this Yes Spirituality YouTube channel, which is titled Scientific Medicine, A Wide Angle View, which has 70 videos. It covers every part of the body from top to toe, and with a few general sessions like the introduction at the beginning and some concluding sessions. It's more or less like a book. And the sequence is also like the chapters in a book. For example, when it comes to the cardiovascular system, you find that there is one video on the heart, one on the blood vessels, and in these the focus is more on the basic sciences, less on clinical. Then there are two videos, one on hypertension, one on coronary artery disease. In these the focus is more on clinical, less basic. But then there's no strict division between basic sciences and clinical sciences in these 4 videos. Not only there's no basic distinction between basic and clinical sciences, there's no distinction even between modern medicine, Ayurveda, yoga, and spirituality. So you find a seamless blend of basic subjects, clinical subjects, Ayurveda, yoga, and spirituality in these 4 videos. And then there's a 5th video, which is on Dean Ornish, which gives you a bit of the personal history of Dean Ornish, like a story, how he, in spite of having studied medicine in the US, how he went on to get interested in this, where the roots were, how he became a cardiologist with a difference, and along with that, what he found. So his findings along with his personal history. So these 5 videos form one unit. And the same applies to other units also. For example, the unit on blood has one video on blood, one on immunology, and one on Norman Cousins, whom you just heard about. So that's how we have these 70 videos in this. And the cancer unit, then there's one video on Bernie Siegel.
I am pretty certain there will be a lot of questions. I promise you we have a little bit of time, so we will take all the questions as much as we can. We'll start from this side because that's closest to me. I have a lot too, so I will give the audience the first chance.
Thank you, Ramesh. If you remember me, we were in the same class in AIIMS. And I'm so glad to see you here and the presentation that you made. I got up for 2 reasons. First, I totally agree and subscribe to what you said about the immune system happening with positive effects on the body, particularly for cancer. And I got up because I'm a cancer survivor. I got colon cancer and I went through this process and I came to the same conclusion that you did. And so right now, I'm on no medicine. And it took me 2 years of introspection to figure this out on my own. And I want to share another point that you made about cancer. I was at the NIH when I was working as a radiologist. And there was a guy called Rosenberg, Stephen Rosenberg, who was a highly placed surgeon at Harvard University. And he opened up his patient with pancreatic cancer. He went in there. It was so widespread that if he tried to do anything, the patient would die on the table. So he came out and told the family, sorry, I closed him up and I can't do anything. And a few weeks or months later, he was walking in a mall in Boston and he saw his patient alive and well. And that made him think that there's an immune system here. So he gave up becoming a surgeon, came to NIH. He was given a whole new wing to start the process of looking at immunotherapy in cancer. And now it is working. It took 30 years, but we see, I still work in the cancer area, and for lung cancer, we see it working beautifully. So I applaud you for your contribution. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing.
Hello. Hi, Dr. Dalla. Excellent talk, Now, you mentioned about Dean Ornish reversal of heart disease. I think for a long time, besides diet and exercise, the diet he promoted at that time was a very zero-fat diet, low-fat diet to reverse heart disease. As a matter of fact, American Heart adopted his diet in reversing heart disease. But later on, in I think about 2013, where a landmark trial came out and really put that diet into trial to see whether that really reverses heart disease, which was the classical Mediterranean diet in preventing heart disease, which was published in 2013, where they had three groups. They took three groups were one patient with Mediterranean diet, and they were given extra virgin olive oil, and the second group was given mixed nuts, and third was American Heart diet, low-fat diet. And they wanted to know which one of these works the best. The study was sponsored by the Spanish government, was continued supposed to be for 6 years, but was stopped at 4.5. Because what they found was the diet which was rich in olive oil and Mediterranean diet, it almost shows 30% reduction in heart disease, stroke, and cardiovascular mortality. But diet which was taking mixed nuts, walnuts, almond, hazelnuts, shows the same thing, 30% reduction in heart disease, stroke, within 4.5 years, which was amazing, without use of statin, without use of drug, only diet modification. The third diet, which was a Dean Ornish diet, the low-fat diet, did nothing. And that is why the recommendation of American Heart was changed. Even though Dean Ornish played a role, but his diet is not accepted today by American Heart. So now we know that there is a good fat and a bad fat. So I think that concept he didn't realize, because we know that olive oil is a good oil. Animal fat is a bad fat. So I think fat is not bad, but the point is same thing. We have good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates. We have fruits and vegetables that are good carbohydrates. So there are other bread and pasta and other things that are bad carbohydrates. So I think the whole concept of reversing heart disease, yes, his reversal may have come from exercise and other things which he was also saying, diet promoting healthy lifestyle. But about the diet, I think there were questions whether that was the right diet.
Thank you for the comment, Dr. Halla. Just a few comments based on what you said. Mainly it has 2 points. One was Dean Ornish's diet, which was actually he had recommended two types of diets, a reversal diet and a prevention diet. The prevention diet did allow for some fat. The reversal diet did not. But then if we look at the fats as a whole in general, the medical profession has revised its opinion a lot within the last 50 years. In the 1970s, based on some study, we said all saturated fat is bad, unsaturated is good, more unsaturated the better, and we started promoting sunflower oil. And this went on for about 30 years. And in fact, in practice, among the cardiologists and in the general public, and also advertising by those who are manufacturing sunflower oil and sesame oil and such oils, corn oil and all that ensured that for a long time, people continued to take those diets. But then what was realized was that was not really a well-balanced intake of fat because it was providing no N3. The N3-N6 ratio, N3-N6 PUFA ratio, polyunsaturated fatty acid ratio, had been tilted very drastically. With very little N3, the ratio of N6 to N3 was touching 30:1, whereas in the traditional diet, sometimes it was just 5:1 or even less than that. So that's when we turned to a more modest recommendation that up to 30% of the energy intake can come from fat, 1/3 saturated, 1/3 monounsaturated, and 1/3 polyunsaturated. And within the polyunsaturated, the N6-N3 ratio should not be more than 5:1. So that is the recommendation that probably more or less continues even now. So that was changed. So which means that we did allow for some fat intake. So if you look at it in light of the traditional Indian diets, you find that in a way it was going back to the same traditional Indian diet. Doctors, cardiologists in India who had stopped saying don't touch butter, don't touch ghee, once again started saying that you can take some. And in fact, we did a study at the institute on this, and we found that providing 10% of the energy intake in the form of ghee not only was harmless, but in fact raised the HDL levels. So we once again came to a moderate approach. Olive oil, I would say, is an overrated oil. Again, probably because of a lot of research, maybe lobbying by the olive oil manufacturers or whatever it is, in overrated oil, it is essentially monounsaturated fat. It has no N3. The only vegetable oils which have substantial amounts of N3 fatty acids are soybean oil and mustard oil. No other vegetable oil has N3 fatty acids. So if we have to make up for the deficit of N3 fatty acids, these are the two cooking oils to recommend, not olive oil. And again, olive oil is a part of Mediterranean diet, but then if you look at the Mediterranean diet as a whole, you find that not only that diet has a lot else which might be helpful, but also the way they eat. It's a collectivistic culture like the Indian culture. They try to eat, the family as a whole tries to eat together. They eat in a, what you may say, mindful way. So that is also part of the Mediterranean culture. So therefore, to say that the olive oil is all that is good in the Mediterranean diet is again giving too much credit to just one single dietary factor. And I'll close this discussion with a study which was done long back on rabbits. Rabbit is a very good model for studying atherosclerosis. In this, the rabbits were divided into two groups. One group got the high-fat, high-cholesterol diet. Another group got the usual normal rabbit diet, which is all grass, etc., vegetable. So then, after 4 weeks or so, when they analyzed the results, they found that while those who got the healthy rabbit diet did not develop atherosclerosis, those who got the unhealthy, high-fat, high-cholesterol diet seemed to split themselves into two groups. One got and one did not get atherosclerosis. I'm putting it in black and white just for oversimplification. Experimental results are not so clear-cut. But they also seem to have two subgroups. One group developed and one group did not develop atherosclerosis. Then they went into the detail, how could that be? The diet is exactly the same. So then they found that in the animal house, the rabbits were kept in cages. The cages were on racks. The rabbits which were in the cages on the lower racks, they did not get atherosclerosis. Those which were high up, they are the ones who got atherosclerosis. Now, what could the position of the cage have to do with getting or not getting atherosclerosis? They further went into the detail and found that the technician who came to feed the rabbits, when it came to the lower cages, she took the rabbit out, held it in her lap, cuddled it, fondled it, kept it back in the cage, and then gave it food very lovingly. When it came to the top cage, she could hardly reach there. She opened the door, threw the food in, and shut the cage. So the rabbits who got a daily dose of love and affection could override the adverse effects of a high-fat, high-cholesterol diet. The mind-body relationship is that strong.
Just to add to all this discussion, Dr. Manchanda, our AIIMS-Union professor who taught me cardiology, he has started a center in India, in Delhi, and it is about reversal of coronary artery disease. My father took that after he got his stents placed, and for 25 years he lived beyond with no medication. So I don't know if it reversed it. We never did a study. But clinically, he was doing fine. And for people in Delhi, they have that luxury.
Dr. Subhash Manchanda is also an Amazonian,
Yes.
probably fourth batch.
Oh, okay.
Fourth batch Amazonian. And yes, they are important. But again, mind is more important. Because that's what, like and Dr. Dhalla also just said that it may not be the diet which Dean Ornish gave, but it may be other factors like exercise and not smoking and so on. That is what most medical people told him when he did his studies. Initially, of course, they told him that these studies can't be true. That's also so because he started these studies in the 1970s. He didn't have enough funding. But then gradually he got more, he developed in his profession, he grew and he got funding. So he did these studies based on coronary, in which coronary angiography was done. And it was a controlled study. So that's what made sort of convincing evidence. But then even when convincing evidence came, and more convincing evidence came another 4 years later in a study in JAMA, in which he added PET scan to this so that he could show the blood flow. Not only the coronary artery stenosis was reversed, but the blood flow, myocardial blood flow also improved in these patients. That's what he demonstrated, those who got this intervention. But anyway, so he was also told the same thing. Probably it is the diet, probably it is exercise, probably it's not smoking. Nobody said that it is because of the mental peace that the patient is developing. So, we have a tendency to give greater credit to the physical factors, but then when it comes to physical factors, we are all making mistakes. Some because of ignorance, because as we just talked about fat, even the medical people have changed their opinion so much within the last 60 to 70 years. Starting with no saturated fat at all, and today a more moderate intake. So, firstly, because of ignorance, we may not be sure about the physical factors. Secondly, even when we know, there are many compulsions of modern life which make it difficult for us to follow all the lifestyle factors properly. For example, we all know that we should sleep early, we should get up early, and we should sleep enough, and the quality of sleep should be good. And yet most of us sleep late. We know that the heaviest meal should be lunch, but most of the time the heaviest meal happens to be dinner, and that too rather too late. Now all these things happen, and we say, well, we can't help it. Otherwise, we'll be socially dead if we try to follow that healthy lifestyle. Which means that there are some compulsions of modern life which make it difficult. So because of ignorance, because of these compulsions, we are all making some mistakes when it comes to physical factors. So what we have to see is that at least take care of the psychological factors, because that is where spirituality comes in. We might say that, well, stress is inevitable in modern life. But then that is what spirituality is about, to have mental peace which is completely independent of external circumstances. If we wait for external circumstances to be all right, that is, I should have enough money, I should have a good income, I should be working, doing some work which gives me good intellectual satisfaction, and that my partner should behave well with me, my children should be doing well in school, in college, and they should be well placed, and so on and so forth. If we want all these things to happen, which is a part of our external circumstances, then life will never be 100%, and if it is 100% sometime, we'll not be sure how long it will last. Which means that if our happiness is dependent on external circumstances, we are guaranteed to be unhappy. So the trick is to find how we can be happy independent of external circumstances. And that is where spirituality comes in. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Yoga is equality. Equality, not equanimity. Samatvam is, strictly speaking, not equanimity, but equality, which means responding to all external circumstances with equal delight. Now you say, how can you respond with delight to unfavorable circumstances? You can respond with delight even to unfavorable circumstances, because they also have at least one positive feature, even if we don't know of all the positive features that they might have. One positive feature all of them have. They are all opportunities for spiritual growth, which is the very purpose of human existence. So that is what makes it possible to respond to all types of circumstances with equal delight, which is what, strictly speaking, samatvam is.
Wow. How do you unpack what he just said? And so I just want to publicly share how much of an impact, Dr. Bijlani, you had on my life. I think I was one of those rabbits in the lower cages who got the benefit of your love and affection, and this has made a huge difference in my life. More than even the content of your talk today, I think I can speak for everyone. It's what you embody. It's your presence, it's your humility. And I had always thought of you as someone who embodied the intellect of a scientist, which you are, well-renowned, but also the heart of a healer. But I hadn't heard this, but I saw today the soul of a wise man. And I wanted to just share how much it has touched me. I have a question, particularly for the younger people in the room. We, like I did, spent so much of our time developing our mind. We were taught how to think analytically, scientifically, critically. And you talked about that's only the switch. And in some ways, perhaps I didn't fully understand it, because there's a lot to unpack in what you said in this talk in a very elegant, well-planned way. how do you take that switch which has been turned on? And in fact, many of us are self-selected for that through those exams and papers we have to write. How do you keep that switch turned on or dim it a little bit for the soul, the psychic being you talked about, for it to show through? What advice would you have for all of us, but especially the young in the room?
Well, essentially, we are all looking for happiness. And for the young people, I think even if happiness is not the goal of life, what one has to emphasize is that being happy and living a life full of love are inseparable. We all want to be happy, but very often we are looking for happiness at wrong places, and looking for happiness outside us, whereas the true source of happiness lies within us. And within us in the sense that if we say that the most important thing that keeps us happy is love, which is expressed by giving, then what one has to see is that this love not only is always in our own hands, because giving is always in our own hands, getting is not. It also has a superior feel as compared to the happiness that comes from getting something. Now, these are something which one can always reflect upon, and even a young person can easily realize it, because we have all had some experiences of both types. Getting something and feeling happy, and then that fleeting happiness being of a fleeting character. Giving something and experiencing happiness which has a superior feel. All these experiences we've all had. We just need to reflect on these experiences and realize that being happy, living a life full of love, and fulfilling the purpose of life, all these are inseparable. Even if we don't talk about spiritual masters, the industrialist Godrej, once he was asked what he would expect from his children, he said, I would like them to be good, happy, and successful in that order. So that is sort of the ultimate wisdom that even he has reached. Because if you are good, you will be happy. And if you are good and happy, success will take care of itself. Because that is what young people are looking for. They want success in the material sphere, in the real world. But then we just have to put the sequence right.
Hi, Dr. Bijlani. This is Shrey here. I think I was the last batch you taught. Right here, sir. 2004 batch. You helped us actually pass the exams because I couldn't understand Guyton at all, so I used to read your book. So that was very nice because we can read it and write that. And sometimes we used to make farras out of that and we'll just paste it in the exam while under the desk. I'm pretty sure this room is full of a lot of wisdom, and there will be a lot of anecdotes and questions shared on those lines. But what I'm going to ask is very pertinent to my practice. I'm glad someone was a survivor of the colon cancer. I'm a colorectal surgeon. So when a patient comes to me because of medical legal issues, I'm not going to tell them that I'm not going to operate. We're going to do the conventional therapy as such, because that's the part of the treatment guidelines. How do you suggest that we incorporate the holistic appeal or the medicine that you are trying to teach here? Everybody, all of us agrees that stress kills us. I feel it. When I feel happy in doing my yard work or something, I feel so good, like I'm disconnected from the medicine. So we all agree. There is no question about it. How do you incorporate in this economy-driven, insurance-driven medicine right now, where you're so worried about your medical legal challenges, and also at the same time you want to do right by your patient in the limited amount of time because you are on production? More pertinent to the US practice medicine, but this is what my practice is, and I would like the answer based on what I feel in my real life. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a very important question. As you said, practice of medicine is economy-driven, and it's not only in the US, it's also in India. That's what one of the things that is happening a lot in the private sector in India too. And one answer that I often give is that ultimately it's the doctors who have to wake up. Because I don't know what's here, but in India, many of the private hospitals are managed by MBAs. You know, they have a degree in administration. They don't have a degree in medicine. They are the ones who have been employed by the person who started the hospital who may be a businessman. So for him, it is business. He employs an MBA who is good at administration. And then this MBA tells the doctors that you should generate at least this much revenue. Now that is what drives the practice. And added to that is all what the pharmaceuticals do and so on and so forth. So what I say is that it is the doctor who has to stand up and have the courage to say that I am a doctor, I am not a businessman, so this is what I will do. And even if half the doctors in the hospital do it, medicine will change. Because the MBA can't run the hospital. It depends upon doctors. But then doctors are also benefiting from it. So in a way, doctors are colluding in also succumbing to that greed. So it's a collusion in which the pharmaceuticals, the person who owns the hospital, the doctors, and the person who's managing the hospital, the MBA, they're all collaborating because everybody is benefiting from it. The sufferer is the patient.
Dr. Bijlani,
One last question.
Dr. Bijlani, here, so many nuggets of wisdom. Two brief comments and a question. One comment, you simplified so beautifully how to get electricity lighting up the bulb in terms of the simplicity of love, helping make that connection, and an expression of that being love, being giving. I mean, it really was a very simplified but very true piece of advice. The question, the other comment that I would make though is, we tend to basically have modern medicine, Ayurveda, all these things butt against each other. And the reality is, scientific medicine has really, or modern medicine, as you might call it, has really made a difference in people's lives. As Neil deGrasse Tyson basically points out, lifespans have tripled in the last 100 years. And much of that, if not all of that, is related to the advances that have been provided by modern medicine. So there are virtues to modern medicine. There are virtues to Ayurveda. There are virtues to there are many ways to knowledge, if you will. And the question I would ask you is, you actually were very kind to share the distinction between Vedanta and Vedic practices and emphasize the importance of Vedanta in contrast to Vedic practices as really being the source of wisdom. Similarly, I would ask you, and this is a difficult one, but I know you can do justice to it. I'm certainly going to come to the Aurobindo ashram to get more wisdom, learn more, and I'm going to watch those 70 videos on scientific medicine. But just as you simplified the connection between the soul and via the mind to the body, can you also speak briefly or a couple of nuggets from those videos about how you integrate Ayurveda, if you will, to modern medicine?
Before I answer your questions, Rajiv, here is a quote which I intended to read from this book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, which has a bearing on the question which was just asked earlier about the economy-driven medicine. The remarkable bottom line of the science of love is that giving protects overall health twice as much as aspirin protects against heart disease. If giving weren't free, pharmaceutical companies could herald the discovery of a stupendous new drug called Give Back instead of Prozac and run TV ads about love. Now coming to your question, you see, when it comes to different systems of medicine, there is no either or, firstly. Secondly, we have to overcome our prejudice against ancient systems as medicine, which is sometimes, in spite of not knowing much about those systems, not that I know too much about Ayurveda, but we have to keep our mind open to one basic thing, that Ayurveda has knowledge which came from a source different from the way modern science has grown. And therefore, to apply the same yardsticks, because the most open-minded people say, well, there is maybe something good about Ayurveda, but then let them do the research, let them also prove the value of their drugs through randomized, double-blind controlled trials, then we'll accept Ayurvedic drugs. Firstly, Ayurveda is much more than drugs. Secondly, those who say, this sounds very good, that they're very liberal, they're ready to accept anything new, but that requires some background knowledge, and as a result of which, you'll realize that that knowledge did not grow through the same method. Why? Because it's highly individualized medicine. It takes into account the prakriti of the person. Then, it also takes into account the dominance of the doshas or the three humors in different seasons, at different times of the day, in different age groups. And the formulations are very complex. Forget about the other aspects of it, because Ayurveda is not only about drugs, but right now I'm concentrating on drugs. It has in so many elements of yoga also incorporated into Ayurveda. So it has complex formulations. Now, if you have to study one formulation properly, you would have to see what is it that you can eliminate and still the drug will work or not. What is the active principle, which is something which we tend to look for. What we forget is that all these components put together, if you try to eliminate one and see one at a time and see which is the one which is really important, which is the one which is insignificant, and then on top of that, is the method of processing really important? If you try to see all that, how many times you'll have to do the study? One formulation itself will be more than lifetime's work for a whole team of scientists. And therefore, then how did the ancients discover that formulation, which has so many components and put together, some of which may be reducing side effects, some of may be improving bioavailability, all those functions could also be there apart from the active principle. How did they discover it? Seems to be there was only one method, and that was from the direct source from which they received spiritual wisdom, from which they learnt about the deepest truths of existence. And you find that, in fact, that the most ancient texts of Ayurveda have not been written by physicians, but by the rishis. The Ayurvedic knowledge, much of it comes from Atharva Veda, Upaveda of Atharva Veda. Upaveda is an appendix. It's an appendix to a Veda. That is the oldest text of Ayurveda that is available to us. So the route was the same as the route by which the rishis received those deepest truths of existence, which is not the intellect, it's from a level higher than the intellect. So unless we are ready to open to accept that knowledge can come from sources other than the intellect itself is not perfect, and that can be a source higher than the intellect from which it can come, and for which, if we are open, we'll also have at least, if not evidence, at least a dim awareness. Because even in modern science, you find that much of systematic research takes science only further 1 millimeter at a time. The breakthroughs come not because of that systematic approach, but through some intuitive guidance which comes from within, and suddenly there's a flash of an idea and the person works on it. Like, Otto Levy's experiment you might be doing in physiology. How the person got this idea in a dream, and then he suddenly rushed, he didn't want to lose the idea, he rushed to the lab and did the experiment, and it worked. The vagus was releasing a substance which could slow down the heart rate. So there are sources of wisdom which are higher than the intellect. Unless we are open to that, we will not build. Now, coming to that, how do we integrate the two? The integration for that, generally I turn to the way Sri Aurobindo integrated the traditional schools of yoga in his synthesis of yoga. What he said was that what we have to do is first look at the central principle which is common to all schools of yoga, and add to that those particular features of each school which are important to the extent that really matter and to the extent is acceptable to us. So the same can be done in medicine also. There is something in common which is common to all systems of medicine. They are all concerned primarily with prevention and preservation of health, and only after that with treatment of disease. That can be one broad way of looking at all systems of medicine. Add to that what are the particular features of each system. For example, in modern medicine, the particular features would be diagnostic accuracy. That would be one of the things which modern medicine has achieved to a remarkable degree, which Ayurveda does not have. Maybe certain types of surgery, etc., treatment of acute illnesses. So every system has something strong. So take those particular features of that, and the same way take particular features of Ayurveda and other systems of medicine and work out a synthesis. So it is that synthesis. And in a way that synthesis has begun, and it has begun in this country. Here we have more of these pioneers, people like Dean Ordination, Bernie Siegel, and Deepak Chopra, and Larry Dossey, and that person in New Mexico also. Person in New Mexico who also has written a book on comparing different systems of medicine and so on. Worked on this integration. Yes, and rewired. So these are all efforts at synthesis going on already. But the unfortunate part is that they all drawn inspiration from ancient Indian wisdom, but Indians themselves in India are not willing to look at it.
Thank you, Dr. Bijlani. Thank you, thank you, thank you.